Louisiana Republicans are asking the Supreme Court to determine if someone is black. They're asking the Supreme Court to narrow the definition of black so they can redistrict and exclude some black people and could minimize their voting power. Louisiana, the same state that wanted to give the death penalty to women who sought an abortion. Red states are making laws that blue states would have to follow if the Supreme Court rules in favor.
That's right. Louisiana Republican lawmakers are actually fighting to control black identity itself by restricting who they say qualifies as black. And the Louisiana GOP's scheme has a cynical goal: manipulating redistricting to further weaken the power of black votes in a state with the second highest black population in the nation.
If we have 55% voter turnout, Republicans win. 60% voter turnout, Democrats win. 65%, Democrats win in a walk. That's what we had when Obama was running. 70%, we don't even have a Republican Party anymore. You better vote.
Republicans are pushing this redefinition of black identity specifically because the courts have stopped them from stripping away black voting power by other means. Federal courts have already found that red states are violating the Voting Rights Act by weakening the power of black votes. So instead of changing their laws, states like Louisiana want fewer people to qualify as black in the first place. Let's break this down. Since 2003, the Supreme Court has held that people who identify as black on census forms are black. Simple, right? Not for the GOP. Look at this excerpt from Louisiana's federal court case. Here, they're saying that people who identify as multiracial, say black and Latino, should not be considered black under the law. If this sounds like race purity language, you're right. And it's not even the first time Louisiana has tried this. In fact, they even passed a black blood law, which used a mathematical formula to determine who counted as black. And do you want to guess when that law was passed? 1970. And it wasn't even repealed until 1983. You cannot make this up, folks. Under Louisiana's old nonsense black blood law, anyone they figured was less than 1/32 black blood would not qualify as black. Louisiana's new law would do away with even the pretense of math. If you identify as anything but black or half black and half white, sorry, the GOP says you're not black anymore. Would it surprise you to know that this law was championed by white people? So let's pause for a second because that was a lot. 1/3 of Louisianans are black. They vote overwhelmingly for Democrats. And they've kept on voting even as the state Republicans have enacted laws designed to shut down polling places and make it even harder to cast a ballot. Republicans don't care if any of this is legal, they just know it works. Now Louisiana's law is headed for the Supreme Court, and that's a really dangerous place for black rights to be. Back in June, when most Americans were focused on abortion, the Supreme Court also decided another Louisiana case. This one blocked the creation of a majority black congressional district. As it stands, even though black Louisianans are 1/3 of the population, 5 of the state's 6 congressional districts now have white majorities. And if you think this is just a Louisiana thing, you're wrong. The Supreme Court also killed off a second majority black district in Alabama last February. That leaves Alabama with just 1 black majority district out of 7, in a state where black voters are 26% of the population. Here's why that matters.
These particular lines where African Americans are 27% of the population, but a majority in 1 of 7 districts, 14% of the districts, that these will stay in effect for the next election cycle.
So, Jessica, what precedent does this set for other similar voting rights cases? Does this mean that state law is now preeminent to this Supreme Court?
So, yes and no.
Yes and no. A Supreme Court trying to have it both ways on discriminatory racial redistricting policy. And now a Supreme Court that has become so conservative that even John Roberts, who gutted the Voting Rights Act a decade ago, thinks Trump's appointees are simply going too far. That should really terrify you.
We're seeing that this is not just a conservative court, but a court that's so conservative that they've lost Chief Justice John Roberts, who, let's remember, was the author of the Shelby County decision from almost a decade ago, where the Supreme Court essentially gutted half of the Voting Rights Act. So I think in the short term, what's going on, to your question, is that a majority of the court is saying, we don't want to tell Alabama to quickly redraw their maps. We'd rather just keep the status quo.
So where does that leave Louisiana? Well, the Supreme Court has made perfectly clear they're fine giving their approval to Republican plans to make black voters invisible in their own states. It's not that far of a walk for the court to now say that white lawmakers should be able to define blackness, for the purpose of making it invisible, too. And for plenty of Republicans, policing blackness is one of their favorite things about being a Republican. Just listen to white nationalist Dalton Clodfelter, who explains here why he's so excited to be fighting for exactly the kind of discrimination on full display in Louisiana.
America is the great Satan. And you know who's telling you this? A patriot, someone who loves not this country, but what this country can be. I love the idea. I love what this country could become. And I love a lot of what this country once was. It's the other thing. That's why Make America Great Again means so much to me. I love what this country once was. Before the civil rights movement. Cack.
There's no mystery here, folks. The far right is foaming at the mouth to roll back America to a time before the Voting Rights Act and before the Civil Rights Movement, giving Republican lawmakers the power to decide who is black and who isn't, and who can vote and who can't, is a huge part of their wingnut strategy for bringing back the Jim Crow era. Now this huge case rests in the hands of a Supreme Court that has been deeply compromised by its seeming addiction to far-right ideology. In Louisiana, that means it might soon become a lot harder for black residents to make sure their vote actually matters, and MAGA extremists across the nation are looking to Louisiana for guidance on just how far they can roll back the clock on civil rights, too. If you made it to the end, thanks so much for watching. Please leave a like and consider subscribing. And leave a comment below so you can let me know what I should cover next.